to Nate's on Sports. My name is Nathan Simmons, and with me, as always, is Nathan Kwan. We've got a lot to discuss this week. Specifically, NFL playoffs are continuing, and the Atlanta Falcons, who we both picked to move on to the NFC Championship, failed us as they were shut down by the Philadelphia Eagles defense, 15-10. Granted, they had a chance to win it at the end there, but unfortunately, Julio Jones couldn't come down with the catch in the end zone. What was your take on the game?
Yeah, we forgot about how good the Philadelphia Eagles defense was this year. They were, a top 10 unit, and that certainly documented Atlanta's struggles offensively at times this year. And they didn't look good in their week before against the Rams, and they didn't really look good this game, even though they seemed like they had control, they had the lead, and their defense was playing well. It was a good job on the Eagles to come back in the second half, and the defense really shut down the Falcons for the most part throughout that game.
Absolutely. No, this is we definitely overlooked this Philadelphia defense. I mean, that front seven is just so strong, or at least like the defensive line, even with rookie Derek Barnett, who's been phenomenal. But you also have Brandon Graham and Fletcher Cox. It's a tough front seven. The secondary lost a few people from last year, but they were able to gain so many more. It's also addition by subtraction by letting Nolan Carroll walk. But and Nick Foles did a great job filling in. I mean, kudos to Philadelphia for pulling it off. They get to play at home now in the NFC Championship. And take us through what happened with the Pats game.
Well, it was just a mauling, as many of us expected. New England's offense just rolled against the Tennessee defense, was pretty mediocre. And they shut down Kansas City, who didn't have Travis Kelce in the second half, and they didn't run the ball well against Tennessee D. But this game, they were just overmatched on that side of the ball. And I think it's just story of the season for Tennessee offensively, just rather disappointing. Marcus Mariota, after last year, it seemed like he was on the up and up. But whatever happened this year was not good. And indirectly, it led to the Titans getting rid of their head coach, Mike Mularkey, in kind of a surprising fashion. After 1 week ago, the owner said that she was supportive of the head coach. But New England moves on, and we'll see if they can get to another Super Bowl.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, this is a strong. They struggled a bit to start the year, but have been chugging along just fine ever since. At the end of the day, too. Also, I mean, with the Titans, it's weird to see them go back and forth on whether or not to keep the coach so quickly. But let's be honest here, too. I mean, Mike Mularkey, he got a winning record and was able to win his only playoff game this year. But I mean, he wasn't exactly anything special, and this Tennessee Titans team wasn't anything special, even though they had talent across the board. I mean, the coaching carousel is going to be pretty hot this year, so it's going to be interesting to see that. Let's move on forward to who the Patriots are going to face. A surprise team in the Jacksonville Jaguars, honestly. We both picked the Steelers to go over on this one. And kudos to this Jacksonville team in Pittsburgh, of all places. I mean, in some semblances, the defense was the big reason why they won, but I mean, it's still a defense that gave up 42 points. And it was just the fact that the defense was able to score, the offense was able to score. Yeah, it was a good all-around effort by this Jacksonville Jaguars team.
Yeah, some could say the Steelers might have overlooked this Jacksonville team after they looked so bad in that game against Buffalo in the wild card game. But when you have the number one defense and you have a great running game, you always have a chance. And I think that's why this Jacksonville Jaguars team is dangerous. We saw good Blake Bortles last week. He made some clutch throws in the fourth quarter when the Steelers looked like they were coming back, and he was able to hit open receivers. I will say the Steelers defense was not the same this year after they lost Ryan Shazier. They were not as strong on that side of the ball, and there are certainly some chunk plays that the Jacksonville Jaguars took advantage of in this game. A lot of strange coaching decisions as well from Mike Tomlin and the Steelers, going for it on fourth down repeatedly. They had 4th and 1 a couple times, and then they ended up throwing the ball. They did score a couple touchdowns on fourth downs, which was the greatness of Ben Roethlisberger and those receivers. But also kicking an onside kick when they were down 1 touchdown with 5 minutes to go was a little strange. allow Jacksonville to tack extra points without even really going that far down the field, which kind of sealed the game. But I'm very impressed by Jacksonville Jaguars and AFC South. AFC South. Let's go.
Yes. Taking pride in your division. Very good. But yeah, now let's move on to the most exciting game of the playoffs and arguably the entire season. The Minnesota Vikings were able to eke out a win at literally the very last second against New Orleans Saints team. I mean, this was a game that went back and forth in the last 2 minutes. I mean, Minnesota went up by a field goal with 2 minutes left, and then the Saints marched down the field with 2-minute drill and somehow left 16 minutes left on the clock after they kicked their respective field goal. And then, holy cow, a miracle in Minnesota. With 4 seconds left, Case Keenum throws a pass to Stephon Diggs, and I mean, he was only 30 yards out from the end zone, but unfortunately, the New Orleans Saints safeties and secondary played the receiver wrong and let him not really jog, but run all the way into the end zone. Yeah, what was your take on the game?
Marcus Williams was that cornerback who completely whiffed on that tackle, which he'll probably remember for the rest of his life, and Saints fans will probably as well. But yeah, no, this game was nuts. It was dominated early by Minnesota. Their defense had 2 interceptions of Drew Brees in the first half, and offense was moving the ball with Case Keenum, and especially in the running game with Gerrit McKinnon and Latavius Murray. But then the second half, the New Orleans defense really stepped it up. They put pressure on Case Keenum, which they got some sacks, they got some 3-and-outs, and then Drew Brees does what Drew Brees does. He starts to take control of the game, and 4 seconds left. Yeah, you mentioned a missed tackle, and Stephon Diggs runs into the end zone. I don't remember the last time I screamed while watching a game, although I might have screamed during the national championship on that final play, but that was just nuts. And I can't imagine what New Orleans Saints fans are feeling and what Minnesota Vikings fans are feeling, but just a crazy game. And, the Case Keenum magic is real. I said last week, the narrative of the local Texas boy playing in the Super Bowl in his own home stadium is something that I was 100% on board with. And
yeah, no, that I mean, and also the funny thing about this is that it's Case Keenum versus Nick Foles, who I mean, for all intents and purposes, were journeymen throughout much of their NFL careers, and not only that, they were coached by Jeff Fisher, both coached by Jeff Fisher at one point. And I mean, you just have to wonder, geez, how bad Jeff Fisher must be as a coach to just completely shut down basically 3 quarterbacks that were finished in the top 3 of the NFC with Case Keenum, Nick Foles, and Jared Goff. Yeah, I mean, definitely hats off to Case Keenum. He's had a terrific season. And again, also, I mean, this, like I pointed out last week, I mean, it was going to come down to the secondary of New Orleans versus the wide receiver core of the Minnesota Vikings. And that's still their strength going forward, really, on the offensive side of the ball. And I mean, again, defense.
And Foles and Keenum are, I believe they're only going to be the second Texas high school quarterback to start in a Super Bowl, with Drew Brees being the other one, as Nick Foles and Keenum are from Texas. So that's, I mean, who would have thought?
Yeah, no, it's strange things. I mean, also hats off to New Orleans. I mean, they were down 17-0. They were able to pull even and then pull ahead for a bit in the game. So, I mean, they definitely, I mean, it either one of the teams would have been good, but it ended up being Minnesota. And so let's move on to predictions. Jacksonville Jaguars versus Tom Brady's New England Patriots. Funny thing with Tom Brady is that apparently a teammate ran into him and hurt his hand. He had 4 stitches on it. Apparently it was only just a cut, but at the same time, people are going to just lose their mind also because it's Tom Brady and the entire Patriots team revolves around him. So, but that being said, give us your take. Well, who do you think is going to win, Jacksonville or New England?
You want to hear something crazy? Blake Bortles is going to go to the Super Bowl. It's going to happen. I'm totally on board with Jacksonville. They have the number 1 pass defense. They have a great running game. They have a surging quarterback, a good offensive line. New England, yeah, they have Tom Brady, one of the best quarterbacks, if not the best of all time. They have a great passing game. They have a good defense that has been much better in the second half of the year. But I'm picking Jacksonville. I just think that New England, they're going to have to run the ball in this game because that secondary of Jacksonville is just so good. And then their pass rush, they can get pressure with their front four with Malik Jackson, Calais Campbell, Ngake. Linebackers that they have a good mix of young players and veterans and Telvin Smith, Miles Jack. And then, again, Ramsey and Boye and Barry Church, Gibson, and that secondary is so good. And I just think that whenever you have a number one defense and a great running game, I think you have a chance. And I'm going to go Jacksonville with the upset.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go New England on this one still. I mean, again, you can't buy that experience, unfortunately. But yeah, no, I would say also at the end of the day too. I mean, yeah, I think the injury concerns are overblown with Tom Brady. I think he's going to be just fine, and it's just New England. It's as much as there's a lot of factors to choose Jacksonville, including the fact that Doug Marrone is kind of is going to be taking so many cues from Tom Coughlin, who has constantly beaten the Bill Belichick led Patriots when it counted. Despite all that, I still am going to go with New England Patriots just because they have the edge when it comes to experience, and that's what it comes down to in the playoffs sometimes. And especially with this Jacksonville team, I mean, like, yes, Blake Bortles has definitely improved, has definitely not been as bad as everyone made him out to be. I still think also at the same time, part of it has been the fact that he hasn't had to leaned on to carry the offense. And even though this Patriots team does struggle to shut down running backs, and Leonard Fournette has been very good and was very good last game, although he did have a bit of an injury during the Steelers game. I still think the Patriots are going to be able to shut that down, specifically because, again, Leonard Fournette is struggling with a bit of an injury, and that's going to force Blake Bortles to have to make some plays. And the more Blake Bortles has to make plays, the more likely it is that he's going to make mistakes. I mean, and that's just true across the board, but I mean, even more true for someone like Blake Bortles. But that also being said, I mean, I expect this game to be closer than the Tennessee Titans game. I think Jacksonville, the Jaguars defense is definitely 100% for real. Like, I don't like, if you don't think it's for real at this point, then I don't know if you've just been at all paying attention. They have the chance to pull off the upset, but I just don't think that anyone's going to be able to get past Belichick and the Tom Brady.
Well, we'll see. By reference, granted, it was a long time ago, but the Texans played both of these teams this year. They played Jacksonville twice, New England once, and the two Jaguars games weren't even close. The Texans had no shot in that. And the one Patriots game, the Texans arguably should have won that game. Granted, they had Deshaun Watson in that game, and they didn't have Deshaun Watson for 1.5 of the other two games, but they have as good a shot as any team.
For sure. But let's now move on to the matchup we referred to earlier. It's the matchup of the two Texas high school quarterbacks in Minnesota versus Philadelphia, with Nick Foles versus Case Keenum. I mean, who do you think is going to win this one?
Yeah, I think it's really close. I think it's going to be low scoring. Two great defenses. Minnesota's number 1 overall defense, and then Philly's number 4 overall. There's just so many playmakers on both sides. I can't really get a beat on this game, and I'm thinking in the end, I'm just going to go with my Case Keenum narrative in Minnesota playing at home in the Super Bowl, because I think that they'll be able to get pressure on Nick Foles and the offense. I think the Eagles' running game will struggle to get going against the Vikings' front seven. And then the Eagles excel at stopping the run, but I think, I believe in Case Keenum, and I think there's throws to be made against a secondary that's been susceptible to big plays. And as you mentioned, the Minnesota Vikings offense, their wide receivers are really explosive and are playmakers with Adam Thielen, Stephon Diggs, Jarius Wright, and Kyle Rudolph at tight end. So I think there's a little bit more explosiveness on the offensive side with Minnesota. I mean, both defenses are going to be great. It's going to be low scoring. I'm riding the Minnesota narrative to the Super Bowl.
I'll go Minnesota as well. Again, in this matchup, I think it's going to come down to who the better quarterback is, and I think Case Keenum's the better quarterback between him and Nick Foles. I mean, granted, again, like, not to discount Nick Foles. I mean, he's done a great job filling in, and it's not like Nick Foles hasn't had success in the past. I mean, everyone remembers the time that he threw like 27 touchdowns and like only like 2 interceptions in a season, but like that was such a long time ago, and ever since, he hasn't really been able to live up to that. Versus Case Keenum, who's always like, he's been kind of solid for a journeyman fill-in quarterback, but it seems that now it's beginning to click. And again, like going back to those wide receivers of the Vikings. I mean, not to discount the Philadelphia wide receivers. I mean, like they have Nelson Aguilar, Alshon Jeffrey. I mean, they have a strong receiving core of their own, but this Vikings one is much better. And I would also say that the defense, I mean, it's going to be two great defenses going to head. I'd still say that the Vikings defense is the better one, just because I think it's just stronger all around versus the Philadelphia one, which is like, yes, like very strong on the front lines. But again, that secondary is a little bit suspect, I'd say.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, no, Minnesota's secondary is, you have Xavier Rhodes, who's an all-pro, Trey Waynes, Harrison Smith, and Andrew Sandejo. I don't know if Sandejo is going to play. He got knocked out last week. But, yeah, no, they shut down New England's wide receivers in the first half. And, I mean, really, the second half, they didn't play bad defense. Drew Brees has made some crazy good throws over the top, which I don't think Nick Foles will be able to do.
Yeah, exactly. No, and I mean, if there's only one reason that this Minnesota team's not going to be able to make it, it's the fact that the run game's not that strong. I mean, they had Dalvin Cook to begin the season, and he was money, but then he got knocked out for the rest of the season, and they've been relying on Jerick McKinnon and Latavius Murray, I think. And it's just, like neither of them are really true frontline starters. I mean, if Philly does pull off the upset, or I mean, it's hard to say it's an upset if they're playing at home, but if they are gonna pull off the win here, it's going to be again on that run game. And we talked about the run game before. I mean, granted, it wasn't the reason that they won against Atlanta, but I mean, you got LeGarrette Blount and Jay Ajayi, who are both starter caliber running backs. And so that 1-2 punch there could mean the difference here, but I just don't. I honestly don't think that's going to be the case here. Oh, what did the Texans do this time?
They hired a new general manager.
Oh, that's good.
That's
good to hear.
They got Ryan Gaine back. He was with the Buffalo Bills organization. He was a scout under Rick Smith. I mean, he said all the right things. I think the interesting thing is he and Bill O'Brien got a 5-year contract extension.
Oh my God.
So, yeah, you don't see many 5-year extensions off of 4 and 12, but
no, you don't.
Looks like Rick Smith will not be back making personnel decisions, though, because, I mean, if you're going to sign a guy to a 5-year deal, I mean, Rick Smith said he's going to be back in a year. He's as many expected he's going to be some sort of cushy VP role and president, touch personnel.
Well, yeah, but you're also getting someone that's an acolyte of Rick Smith, and so he might still make the same decision, like same type of decisions as Rick Smith, and maybe he's going to be a puppet. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think there was some talk this week because we know about the issues between Bill O'Brien and Rick Smith, how they weren't aligned on a lot of issues. They didn't see philosophically the same ways oftentimes. And I think this is a hire that Bill O'Brien was on the committee to make this hire. So how much of this is Ryan Gaine going to be like just listening to Bill O'Brien? Okay, yes, Bill, I'll do this. Yes, Bill. Or like how much of that will he get his own independent thoughts on what he thinks he should do to build a team? So it's always interesting, that dynamic. I think it's better to have alignment between your quarterback and general manager so that you can build in the right direction and have a philosophy both offensively and defensively on how you want to construct your team. But we'll see going forward. I mean, they don't have first or second round picks. They do have a lot of money to spend in free agency, and there's certainly a lot of upgrades that need to be made, especially on the offensive line and in the secondary.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But yeah, now let's move on to the NBA. One of the greatest dramas in all of humankind right now, mostly because the stakes are so low. So it's like, oh, okay, like nothing bad's going to come of this. No terrible consequences to the real world will happen. But also it's just because there's so much just like diva-like behavior and just why did they do that? Oh my God, juicy details. Gimme. And one of the ones that's been generating the most amount of buzz in terms of juicy gossip and details has been the Houston Rockets. Apparently no secret tunnels in the Los Angeles Staples Center.
Well, yeah, this is where the reality and the gossip kind of are a little hazy on what actually happened. But what we do know is Trevor Ariza and Gerald Green are suspended 2 games. They're going to miss their second game tonight against Golden State. But it was a very chippy game in LA between the Clippers and Rockets. Obviously, there's a little bit of bad blood. Chris Paul coming back to LA and Hibby and Blake Griffin rumors didn't get along in the locker room, and you have all those former Rocket players that are now on the Clippers. And you had incidences with Blake Griffin running over to Mike D'Antoni on the sideline and like hitting him in the tie, stepping on his foot. And then afterward, I guess, it was very heated going back to the locker room. The Rockets weren't happy with the officiating as well. And from what it seems like, Chris Paul and James Harden were trying to be peacemakers and calming down Ariza and Green, who wanted to confront Austin Rivers in the Clippers locker room. There was also rumors that Clint Capella was knocking on the door of the Clippers locker room and trying to get in, and then somebody opened the door and they didn't let him in, so he left. Well, it turned out that was Tariq Black, which I don't know how you mix up Tariq Black and Clint Capella. I mean, I know they're both centers and they're both tall black men, but they don't look alike at all. So that was kind of crazy. And the whole back entrance way to the Clippers locker, I mean, that's not a secret passageway. I mean, they call the Clippers-Lakers rivalry the hallway series. So, I mean, it's very well known that there's like hallways between the locker rooms. That was a little crazy, but I mean, in the end, I think it's well deserved. I think it's really stupid for players to try to storm the other locker room after the game. I mean, better if you wanted to really talk to the player, there's better ways of doing that. And I mean, afterward, cooler heads did prevail. Trevor Ariza called Austin Rivers on the phone, apparently, after Montrezl Harrell, who was a Rocket last year, brokered a kind of peacekeeping mission between the two sides. And everything's okay. They're going to play 2 more times this year, though, so we'll see if anything else happens out of that. But I know you like drama. What did you think of reading all of that?
I thought it was fun. Yeah, just it was just sort of weird. And yeah, I mean, you got Jeff Green and what other Trevor Ariza getting suspended, and I was just very much just like, oh wow, you're going to suspend them over that? Okay, yeah, go for it. But yeah, no, it was fun. It was fun while it lasted. How did the Rockets do throughout the rest of the week?
Yeah, so they only played 2 games, 1-1. Thursday night was the national TV game against Minnesota, and James Harden returned. Luke Mamute also returned on Monday. So the Rockets should have had their full squad for the first time in seemed like 2 months. But again, Gerrit, Green, and Ariza suspended. In the game on Thursday, Harden was bad. I mean, he came back with a minutes restriction. He only scored 10 points, 3-15. Eric Gordon's been really, really good this year. 30 points off the bench, and then CP3 19-9. Gordon look at his numbers. He's actually shooting like a career low at 3-point percentage, but he's getting to the rim. He's getting to the foul line, and he's really having a career year offensively, coming off of 6th man of the year that he won last year. So they should have their full squad back on Monday night with, their starting 5 of Paul, Harden, Ariza, Anderson, and Capella, and then their backups. They have Nene and Tariq Black back at the center position, Gerald Green, Luke Mamute, PJ Tucker, your backup forwards, and then backup guard. They signed RJ Hunter actually, and Eric Gordon. So they should have a full squad. Hopefully everybody stays healthy going forward. Right now, I mean, if they want to catch Golden State, they have to win tonight. It's a Saturday primetime game at home. The final matchup between the Rockets and the Warriors this season. The Rockets are 4.5 back of Golden State. So if they have any shot of catching them for the number 1 seed, they have to win tonight. But at this point, I think they're just holding off for the number 2 seed because San Antonio looks like they're going to struggle now without Kawhi Leonard, who's out indefinitely. And then Minnesota, the Rockets just beat them up without 2 of their key players. So I think they're in a good position going forward.
Yeah, no, they definitely are. There's no reason to really panic all that much with the Rockets. Like, yeah, like they've had their troubles here or there, but at the end of the day, it's still the Rockets with James Harden, Chris Paul, a resurgent Eric Gordon, and a resurgent Clint Capella. Just yeah, I mean, like, you got a good team there, so just no reason to panic. So let's move on to the Dallas Mavs, who finally are back in tank mode. Although they're at least keeping it close. That's nice. We have that Lakers game, which was okay, went to overtime. Dennis Smith was decent in that game. I think he had 20 points in that. I don't remember specifically the amount, but like they at least kept it competitive. And not only that, this was a team that they were competing for in terms of like getting a higher round pick, and the fact that they got the loss meant they got the win in a way in terms of the tank sweepstakes. But even more impressive was the loss to Denver. They were down like 15, 20 points in the second half. And then Dennis Smith went off in the fourth, had 11 points in the fourth quarter to have a total of 25. And I mean, he's just been phenomenal. The season has progressed. I'm really happy that we have someone like Dennis Smith to sort of bank on the future with. He's someone that I mean, and that's the other thing too, is that it's not just like a one-time thing in terms of just like him scoring a lot of points in the fourth quarter. It's been a consistent thing where he's gotten most of his points in the final frame of a game, and he's a clutch performer. For one, am very excited to see him go forward. It should make for an interesting week going forward.
Yeah, I should have kept Dennis Smith on my fantasy team. I think I cut him a few weeks back, but he's been really impressive, and I think he's going to get even better as the season goes on, and he adjusts more to the NBA play, learns more of the playbook from Ray Carlisle, and gets more familiar with his teammates, that sort of deal. But yeah, no, the sky's the limit for him.
Absolutely. So now let's move on to talking about the NBA All-Stars. Interesting lineups on both sides of the coast.
Yeah, I have no real big issues with the starters. LeBron, Giannis, Joel Embiid, Kyrie, and DeMar DeRozan in the East. And then the West with Kevin Durant, Anthony Davis, DeMarcus Cousins, Steph Curry, and James Harden. I think it's interesting this year that they're going to do these team captains and picking players from each side. I do think that they messed it up because they didn't have the selections or the draft live and have it at an event, because that's what the NHL does, and it works really well. And I think inevitably somebody's going to leak the draft order and how they were picked anyway. So if I'm the NBA, I might as well get ahead of it, make it a 30-minute event. You can sell commercials and put a special on NBA TV or TNT or ESPN and make an event out of it. But they're going to do it behind closed doors.
I mean, it's fine. I think the starters were the right picks. This should make for a good game, and I agree that they should make an event out of the drafting selections. That should be fun. That'd be interesting. Like if they can do that out of a 3-point contest or a slam dunk contest, I'm sure they can do it out of a mock draft. So.
Yeah, and the NBA has all these drama and storylines. We talked about how the offseason was better than the postseason. LeBron has the top pick. I mean, who does he go with? Does he go with Kevin Durant so that he doesn't have to face off against him? Does he go with Kyrie and kind of quell the rumors about those two not getting along? And like, does Curry have to take Klay Thompson or Draymond? Does LeBron take Draymond? I mean, there's a lot there, and I think it'd be very interesting to see it live.
Yeah, no, it would make for an interesting time.
You want to move on to UT basketball?
Yes, let's move on to that. UT basketball had 2 games this week. They choked away a 12-point lead against Oklahoma State, losing by 1 point. But I mean, yeah, this was a very winnable game, and they just weren't able to close it out, unfortunately. I mean, Mo Bamba was fine in this game. Dylan Ostakowski, he was fine, but could have done better. I mean, he was the one that ended up missing the final free throw there at the end. That would have, again, given Texas the 2-point lead so that they wouldn't have lost by 1. Yeah, I mean, Eric Davis was fine in this game. They were really missing Kerwin Roach in this game. Had they had Kerwin Roach, I think they probably would have won this game. Because again, I mean, they only lost by 1 point. And so it's just, kind of simple math from there. They still were able to put that out of their mind and really pull off the best win of the season, beating Texas Tech by like 7-8 points and really sticking it to them. Like, this was a number 8 ranked team in the nation, and I mean, Mo had a great game, 15 points, 11 rebounds, but also of note was Kerwin Roach, who added 20 points himself after coming back from that whole wrist being banged up. But a big story going forward has been Eric Davis and how he's been able to turn it around from last season. He's shooting 44% from 3-point land recently, and it's been phenomenal to see and turn around and see him turn into like basically the most valuable player coming off the bench, really filling in for Andrew Jones.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think Eric Davis, his confidence was really shot last year and coming into the beginning of this year. But I think with those injuries, Andrew Jones, obviously, with the leukemia situation, and Kerwin Roach being out, Matt Coleman not being the type of elite scorer we were thinking he might be, I think he's filled the void, and his shooting numbers are way, way better than they have been the last 2 years, and really back to where he was as a freshman when the Longhorns made the NCAA tournament. I think this team is good enough defensively that they can beat anybody on any given night. I think offense is where they are going to struggle at times and is going to determine how far this team can advance in the NCAA tournament. I think their position right now, I mean, they're 3-3 in the Big 12 conference. I think this league is so deep that really you just need to go 9-9 or 10-8, and you're almost assuredly going to get an NCAA tournament bid. The top 4 teams of Kansas, Oklahoma, Tech, West Virginia, those 4 are locks. And then you have this mid-tier where Texas is in there with TCU, Kansas, and Baylor. I think those 4, you might get 2 or 3 more bids. And then you have Iowa State and Oklahoma State. But the Longhorns are in a big test today in West Virginia, a team that is top 10 in the country. And I mean, any top 10 marquee win that they pick up helps them out on their resume. And just in case they lose, a bad game later on to like an Iowa State or Oklahoma State again. I mean, I think this team has rallied around the Andrew Jones situation and picking up, 2 top 10 wins since last Wednesday. And I think that's a storyline going forward for this team, and I think why casual fans should root for them. Just the fact that they're playing for a player that was their leading scorer.
Yeah, no, for sure, absolutely. Kudos to the Texas team for rallying from such a tough situation. But yeah, no, just happy to see that go forward. Let's now move on to MLB Hot Stove, because a big move from the Astros. They traded for Gerrit Cole in exchange for Joe Musgrove, Colin Moran, Michael Feliz, and Jason Martin. I mean, what's your take on this?
Well, I'm excited, optimistically, a little cautious. I do think that they didn't give up their top tier process, which I said they shouldn't last week. And so I'm happy about that. Joe Musgrove obviously was a big piece for this team, was a starter, and then was really much better in the bullpen. And he was part of the power arms at the back end. Granted, the bullpen wasn't very good towards the end of the year, especially in the playoffs, but he was a valuable piece going forward. And he's so young. I mean, he's 24 years old. Michael Feliz has showed flashes in relief. There was questions on whether or not he would be a starter going forward as well. He has electric stuff. Can throw 98-mile-per-hour fastball. Just sometimes can't locate it very well. And Colin Moran, kind of in the infield conversation the last few years. He's been hurt. He was the Astros number 4 prospect. So, I mean, he was still highly rated. So we'll see what he does going forward in Pittsburgh. But I think the Astros, they're looking at the upside of Gerrit Cole. I mean, they have a very good organization in terms of finding pitchers and helping them improve. I mean, we've seen them pull Colin McHugh and Brad Peacock and Charlie Morton and turn them into elite starters, even though they came out of the scrap heap basically. And Gerrit Cole is a former number 1 overall pick. He's had 2 rough years. Some of that could be just a lot of pressure pitching on a losing team and having to be the number 1 guy every time out there and shut down the opposing teams when you know your offense isn't going to produce much. So hopefully they get him back to where he was 2 years ago and have him as like an elite tier starter. And he really doesn't have that pressure here because, again, the Astros have so much depth in that starting rotation with Justin Verlander and Dallas Keuchel and Charlie Morton and Brad Peacock and Colin McHugh and Lance McCullers that, I mean, he doesn't have to be the guy. But I think going forward, this might spell the end of Dallas Keuchel's tenure at the team because, again, he's a free agent after this upcoming year. Scott Boras is his agent. This is his one big opportunity to get paid. We'll see what the free agent market looks like for him next year because this year, I mean, it's just been so slow and we don't know where guys like Jake Arrieta or Yu Darvish are going and how much they're going to sign for. But I think the Astros are in a good position going forward, and hopefully they fix Cole and get him back to where he was and to have him for 2 more years.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good deal for both teams. I mean, yeah, Colin Moran was like really blocked really at this point. I mean, he was someone that you guys got from Miami, so that was cool. Cole, I think, was probably just someone that needed a change of scenery. I mean, as we're going to mention later on after this, I mean, this Pittsburgh team was just clearly a team going nowhere. And just at this point, I'd kind of given up on competing next season and the season after. It's not like I think Gerrit Cole is necessarily going to be able to return to the form he was at, but I think he's going to be vastly improved. A team that should be competing next year again. I don't think this necessarily spells the end for Dallas Keuchel, but this is definitely a good insurance policy, I'd say. Everyone's like scared of the big bad wolf and Boris. But I mean, like, the Rangers have been able to deal with him before, and it's just, again, you just have to, you're going to have to be willing to pay a lot, but like, please do understand Dallas Keuchel is a Cy Young Award winner, so just yeah, I mean, and he was someone who was an ace on a championship team. So I mean, this idea that like, hey, you're gonna have to overpay to keep him, like, I mean, yes, but like he's one of the best pitchers in the league, so it's not like he doesn't deserve it, So
Right. Yeah. I get your train of thought. I guess my argument against paying Keuchel is because you still have to pay all the guys coming up. I mean, Altuve has 2 more years. Then you have Springer. You're gonna have to pay eventually Correa, Bregman. I mean, Lance McCullers eventually as well. So it's an evaluation of what the number is. And obviously Keuchel's been so good, but he also has some health concerns. He's been banged up the last few years. So you're going to have to put that into your risk assessment of whether or not you want to pay him the max money that he's going to command on the open market.
Absolutely. But now let's move on to another big Pittsburgh trade. I mean, it's a Pittsburgh fire sale, and they ended up selling off arguably one of the best players, and the best player that they've had for the past 7 years, and Andrew McCutcheon, traded to the Giants of all teams. I mean, the Giants look like they're definitely trying to go all in. They only got in return Ryan Reynolds and Kyle Crick. I mean, just not exactly the haul that you'd hope, but again, I mean, Andrew McCutcheon was only under contract for 1 more year, and his skills had definitely declined. But that being said, he's a former NL MVP and was one of the best players over the past 5 years. I don't think he's necessarily going to be in that form anymore, but at least he's now going to be. He's now moving on from a team that was going nowhere to a team that potentially could.
Yeah, McCutcheon had kind of a bounce back year last year, 28 home runs, 88 RBI after a very terrible 2016. We'll see what he is in 18. Giants, big offseason getting Evan Longoria and Andrew McCutcheon, 2 former MVP candidates. Very interesting mix there. They have some young players, but they also have a really aging roster. So I think they're trying to extract as much out of their veteran players as possible before they, I guess, completely break it down. So we'll see if they can contend with the Dodgers in the NL West this upcoming year.
Absolutely, yeah, no. But let's move on to shoutouts. First off, Dallas Stars. They had a 5-game break, and then they came back and lost to the Colorado Avalanche in a terrible game. But then they turned it around and won back-to-back games. One against the Boston Bruins with a 3-2 win with Tyler Seguin with a phenomenal goal, just deking out the rest of the Boston team. The next night, they beat Detroit 4-2, and then they lose in a shootout to Columbus 2-1. Still picking up the point and still sticking into the first wild card, but still kind of struggling. I mean, you'd like to see them pick up more points, but it is what it is. Also, the MLS Super Draft happened. What was your take?
Yeah, so the start of the Houston Dynamo, they picked 2 players so far. The first round pick was a goalkeeper from SMU, Michael Nelson. He actually grew up in the Houston area as a Dynamo fan. So picking a goalkeeper, a Dynamo have only one goalkeeper on the roster, Chris Seitz. So Nelson has a good shot of making the team as a backup, which is rare as a rookie. And then the second round, they picked Max Steves out of Providence, a forward. Will add to their depth at the forward position. I think he'll probably play most of the year at the USL team. FC Dallas, they made some moves. They picked up Francis Atueni. They traded up for him, actually, to pick him number 4 overall. And then he had an emotional speech after he was picked. But he's a midfielder out of Michigan. Their second pick in the first round, Iwa Tuamasi, also kind of a winger type from Wake Forest. So that's just adding to their attacking depth that they have. Last year was rather disappointing with the veterans that they had. So maybe some of these young players with their speed and their pace and the way that they can score goals from the flank, I think they have a chance of playing right away. And then in their second round, they picked Mauro Cicero for SMU. I think before he got injured, he was considered one of the top college forwards. So they're really buying low on him and seeing if he can pan out and rediscover some of the form he had before he got injured. But attacking flavor for FC Dallas, and then the Dynamo picking up some needs with some depth in the draft. Shout out to Landon Donovan. He is coming out of retirement to play for a Liga MX team, which I think is very, very strange. Good luck to him playing for Leon in Mexico. A couple more Dynamo notes. They signed a 21-year-old center back from Venezuela, Alejandro Fuenmayor, on a full transfer. Dynamo adding to their depth at their back line. Shout out Albert Felice for donating a computer lab to a school in Honduras. And then shout out to Darren Soren, who the Dynamo acquired from San Jose, essentially for cash. Going to add to their midfield depth. He has played for the El Salvadoran national team as their captain at times throughout his career. So getting a talented player and adding to their midfield depth.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Also, rest in peace to Keith Jackson. He was the one that called the Texas USC game. He'll forever be remembered for
4th and 5, the national championship on the line right here. He's going for the corner. He's got it. Vince Young scores.
Also, rest in peace to Washington State quarterback Tyler Hilinski, who was penciled in as a starter last year, but unfortunately, apparent suicide. Unfortunately, you hate to see that, just with anyone really. Thoughts and prayers with the families of both.
I want you guys to visit our website, twonatesonsports.com. Also, like us on Facebook at Two Nates on Sports. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel as well as on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and Google Play Music, where you'll get a notification as soon as we release our new episodes. You can also send us any comments and suggestions to our inbox at twonatesonsports@gmail.com. Nathan, I'll talk to you next week.
Talk to you then, man.